Especially when people see that I still have ink on my hand.
That's true.
I washed it, but it did not wash off. I didn't like
You need some cherry bomb.
Yeah, I have some at home, actually. I have a whole
there you
giant
go.
tub of it. Yeah.
TCB.
Because I do a lot with my hands. Anyway. All right. You ready? Oh, I'm already recording. So we should just get to it.
Well, let me get ready. Okay.
Great.
Done.
Welcome, everyone, to episode number 39 of the Goulet Pencast, where fountain pens are still a thing. I am Brian Goulet.
I'm Drew Brown.
And we're here from Goulet Pens to deliver this casual and informal, tangential and extraneous, superfluous and extemporaneous fountain pen show, where we talk about what's going on at the Goulet Pen Company and in our fountain pen lives. In today's show, we are going to be answering a lot of questions, talking about wick feeds and why doesn't everybody just use those. We're going to talk about what makes an ink lubricated and what does that even mean. Get you some handwriting practice suggestions, and we'll have a lightning round. So, truth be told, we had to record this in advance because we had a little schedule conflict, but we did not want to leave you all without a Pencast this week. So, we're recording this one back to back with episode 38. I still have ink on my hand. I washed some of it off, but not all of it. My hair is still a little crazy. I don't think I actually talked about that in the last episode, but I gelled it yesterday because I showered like midday. So I wasn't really ready to shower again, but I had like crusty overnight gel still in my hair. So I like washed it, but not with shampoo. So it's like this weird sort of clean, but not really.
John Ralphio from
gel.
Parks and Rec.
I do have a little bit of that going on. Yeah. I meant to talk about it last Pencast, but I failed to. But now you know what's going on in 38 and 39. Anyway, so basically whenever we have to record in advance like this, we can't really talk about what we've done because it hasn't happened yet. Drew, how was your birthday? We don't know because he's still 37 as we're recording this.
I think that I'm going to go to a comic convention. I think I will have gone to a comic convention.
Oh,
so
how do you think it will have gone? See, this doesn't work, folks.
Oh, no, here we go.
This doesn't work.
No, I'm going to tell you exactly. So my son said he was going to wear his elaborate Halloween costume that I made him, and
yes, the one you painstakingly made him over months.
He was super into it. But then the morning of the Comic-Con, sorry. When we were in the parking lot about to walk in, he changed his mind, got really upset because he didn't think anybody else would be dressed up.
Yes,
and we needed to take off everything, and he just wore his base layer into the Comic-Con, and
okay.
Then regretted it once he saw. So then we had to go back out into the car.
Okay.
And he put it back on.
Yeah.
So.
And then by the time all that happened, you didn't get to do the one or two things that he was probably looking forward to doing.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened in the future last
week.
This
is what will have happened by the time we get to it. That's on brand. That's on brand. I'm tracking.
I think so. I feel good about it.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Glad to have this Pencast for you, but we did load up a bunch of questions, so this segment will basically be all Q&A with a little lightning round at the end. So without further ado, we're just going to get right into the Q&A.
All right, we're going to start off with a question from Scott. And Scott essentially asks, why don't more expensive pens use wick feeds like the lower priced workhorses? He specifically mentions how he has used the Pilot Varsity for years and just absolutely loves it. It never dries out. It always writes. It's a super performer. And then while he loves his Lamy 2000, he is regretfully forcing himself to say that the Pilot Varsity actually is more reliable in its simplicity, and wonders why only like super cheap disposable fountain pens use the wick feed system, which, as we know, is a felt kind of small straw or rod that absorbs ink more like a sponge rather than the plastic tunnels of the more conventional fountain pen feed delivery systems.
Okay.
So he finds it incredibly efficient and wonders if it like the Varsity is super, super efficient. If it's so efficient, why don't the more expensive pens leverage this efficient technology?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think of, besides the Varsity, what pens even have that wick in them. I know like the Platinum Preppy highlighter and like other things like that will have it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that's a fountain pen. Like Yookers uses it, but it's not a fountain pen.
It's not a fountain pen. That's got Yook. It doesn't
Yeah,
have a feed.
it's the yoke.
It's got a yoke.
It's the yoke sucker.
We literally asked. We were like, "What is this thing called?" It's not really felt, or it's not really a thing. They're like, "It's yoker. It's their own. It's their own thing they designed."
It's the yoke.
We're like, "Is it yoke? Is that what it's called?" And they're like, "Sure." Like they did.
But no, I can't think of a fountain pen that uses a feed. Only some fountain pen.
Varsity's it. That's all I can think of.
Yeah. Like there have been some, like Noodlers made a rollerball one time that used the little wick thing, and it took fountain pen ink, but it's still not a nib.
But it had problems. Like,
oh, absolutely, it did.
It had problems.
Yeah.
So is there something so magical about what the Varsity's doing? Like,
I mean,
I'll be honest, I don't have a great answer for this because I have so little experience with any other pen besides the Varsity that has a wick feed. Aside from, like you said, the Noodlers one, which, Noodlers sold replacements for that, which we had to use all the time because, I don't know what, I don't know what's different from
and they were hard to
the
install. They would clog, and then we'd have to tell customers, all right, we'll pull the wick out, so you're just using the roller, the metal tip, and then that created other issues.
If the thing dried out at all, well, and because it was on the roller ball, so that maybe that had something to do with it too. It's just like the feed rate that you would get through a roller ball that's using fountain pen ink with a wick feed versus an actual fountain pen nib, maybe that had something to do with it.
Also, they're impossible to fully clean usually. Yeah,
you can't. As soon as you ink it up, it's going to stain it. You're never going to get that thing looking bright and clean again. Yeah. So this is a tough one for me because I have no perspective on what a wick feed would do in any pen besides the Varsity, really. So I basically just have to assume that Pilot, being such a prominent and thorough and established fountain pen manufacturer that they are obviously making these things for the Varsity. I would have to assume that sometime in their 100+ year history, they would have thought, gee, I wonder what would happen if we tested out this wick thing on another pen. And they probably did, and it probably had enough reasons not to do it to where they don't offer it. So I can only assume that, Pilot, they're not sharing like all their R&D with the world, but I would have to assume that at some point somebody at this large company has tested this thing out and found enough problems with it to where there was concern and they're not offering it. So I don't know what black magic they're putting inside these Varsities to make it work so well, but in the only other pen that we have experience with having a wick feed, it was not better than a regular fountain pen feed. It was not in almost any way. Try as Noodlers might. And, I just literally don't know. I think, but we know this wick feed, it probably depends on how it's designed, what it's made of, blah, 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 blah. The only thing I can think, perhaps, Drew, and see maybe if you're with me on this one, this is totally just what I'm surmising could be the situation. The Varsity is only available in a medium nib, right? So this is our only baseline. This one Pilot Varsity medium nib is the only baseline we have for a successfully operating wick feed, right? So I can only assume that just the way it's designed, or maybe the flow with that particular nib, is matched up well with that wick feed. But if you were to put an extra fine nib or a stub or a broad or something else, you would probably have some kind of issue with the flow rate or something like that. Because the problem you have with a wick feed is it's just one supply. It doesn't have like the fins and all that kind of normal stuff like you would have with a conventional feed, where it can sort of act as like an ink regulator. It's pretty much just like, it's just sucking it down like a straw, and it's not going to have the same variability. So my only assumption is that however they designed that wick feed to be paired with that nib, it just works really well. And if you were to change either component even slightly, it would not work as well. So I think that the versatility that you get with a wick feed is not very diverse. And you would have to pick a particular nib size and tweak and design it and all that kind of stuff. That's a total guess. I have no insights. I've never talked to the Pilot about this. That's just what I'm probably assuming is the situation, is like, if you were to put it on a Lamy 2000, it would suck terribly. And maybe it would work on like the medium nib okay, or something like that. But then you put it on an extra fine and it would just not provide enough flow or something. That's my guess. But it's no better than anyone else's guess.
That's a tough one.
Does that sound about?
I think that
does that make sense?
It did make sense to me. I'm like you. I have no idea, but yeah, I have to imagine that even if it worked, the cleaning is still such a big issue because you would have the wick would need to be replaceable because depending on the ink, or you'd have to use it with like nothing but the same black ink. But after a while, wicks are not meant to be multi-use delivery systems. Just like a sponge. Eventually, the thing wears out. You can't use a sponge forever.
Maybe if it's sort of like Euchre's, like if it's a synthetic type thing, maybe it wouldn't like break down over time or anything. But still, if you're using shimmer ink, if you use shimmer ink or pigmented ink or anything like that, you're gonna
the yolk can stain too. So
it definitely stains. I mean,
right, but I mean that means there's ink still there. Like that's what the stain is. Those are ink components remaining in the absorbent, whatever. Yeah. So I would say that if you were able to invent if you were able to somehow regulate the flow issue that is a variable, you would then need to have essentially, I think it would need to be, so you have a gold nib, you have a pen, and then you would need a cartridge attached to a wick feed that whole unit would get replaced, and it would need to then fit right under the nib perfectly so that it delivered everything. But you would need to be replacing the ink and the feed together as one unit, and just that would be a whole new component.
No, this wouldn't be better.
Brian,
this isn't better.
No, it's not. My face hurts because I'm like when you were saying, I have to imagine that Pilot at some point you're like just doing this thing, and I just want to. And now you're just shaking your head. I just want to speed up this whole video to see you just wiggling around and moving.
I do move around a bit.
It's just this so question. I think your very practical, pragmatic brain is just hurting with this one.
Yeah, I'm like, does not compute.
Like, no, this wouldn't work.
But I get it though. Like the varsity works.
Yeah,
so
it's
well
a bit of
for
a
what
conundrum.
I don't know.
This is a tough one. It's a good question, Scott. I appreciate it. But we'll have to ask around. Please, if you have any theories, folks, many folks out there that are more versed in the physical, the physics of the delivery of an ink and the air ink interchange and stuff like that. Let us know what you think, because this has got us pretty stumped.
Yeah, it's a brainer. It's not a no-brainer. It's a brainer.
Definitely a brainer on this one.
All right. Next question we have is from Rabal. I somewhat regularly hear Iroshizuku inks referred to as being lubricated, and most frequently Konpeki is cited as a prime example. I use Konpeki, and I must admit that it seems to write like one would expect a lubricated ink to write, whatever the heck that is. However, your website shows that these inks are not lubricated. If they are not lubricated, has anyone ventured a guess as to what Pilot does to make it seem that way? Oh, yes. What a beautifully clear and easy answer to give. Drew, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, this is also a brainer, Brian.
Yes.
Well, Rabal, that's a good question. The whole, like Brian said, whatever that means when he was reading the question, the feel of a lubricated ink is extraordinarily subjective. So, bottom line, it's not up to us to determine and or advertise whether or not an ink is lubricated. That's up to the manufacturer. If they want to call an ink fast dry, that's up to them. If they want to call it lubricated, if they want to call it water resistant, we do not make those notations, because that would be extraordinarily subjective, and then we'd be getting complaints, we'd be changing our minds, and I'm glad we do not actually have that responsibility. I don't want that responsibility. We don't have any ability to measure that. We just be saying like, oh yeah, this feels lubricated, or oh yeah, this is pretty water resistant, I think. Under what circumstances? How are you going to test it? So if they want to say it's lubricated, great. I can't even define what that means, because you've got noodlers who have their eel series, black eel, green eel, whatever.
Yes.
Or green cactus eel, sorry. But they originally had their lubricated line to assist with piston lubrication. They did not advertise this is going to write a particular way. The lubrication was primarily advertised as to make your piston operate smooth so that it doesn't kind of get tough over uses.
For pens that you can't disassemble, if you use this ink in it, it will help to keep the piston operating smoother than it would with another normal ink.
Right.
That's
and
what
then
it's for. As a
then you have
byproduct, it'll write more lubricated.
Yeah, but that wasn't even what it was intended, and maybe it's just all in our heads. And then you've got Monteverde. They have this ITF technology that they put in their things, and they call their inks lubricated, but then they say that it's for flow. So again, this is all up to them. If they want to say that, they can. There's no way to test for it. There's no way to measure lubrication. So it's up.
Maybe.
How could you measure lubrication? We don't even know what component creates the lubrication.
I mean, we can guess.
We can guess. We can guess all day long, but we definitely cannot come to a point where we can say, okay, you know what, we're going to change a Roshizuku Konpeki to lubricated status.
Well, so this is where it gets more complicated. Like this always comes back to...
Oh, it's already complicated.
This comes back to we don't really know what's in most of these inks, you know? And I think actually... Okay, there's two things going on here. There's one, which is like scientifically, there is something in these inks that are definitive, and you could break them apart, you could test them.
If you knew what was in it, yeah.
Right, but I mean, if you had the resources and the right machines and equipment and all that, you could reverse engineer these inks and say exactly what's in these things. If you were on like CSI Miami, you could,
just Miami though.
Zoom in and enhance. They're like famous for like the ridiculous like stuff, that they would have on there. Anyway, but you could find out every component that's in these things, and you could say there is X amount of whatever chemical that is classified as a lubricant, glycerol or whatever the heck, and you could say these inks have more of this lubricant component, these ones don't, and you could make a firm definition of what is considered a lubricated ink and what is not. Is it something that has any lubricant in it? Is it something that has a certain amount? You could technically do that. We do not have those resources, nor do our manufacturers tell us these things. So we're left to guess. Then you have the community side, which mostly arbitrarily determines what inks seem lubricated and what's don't. That's what Rabal's talking about here, is people talk about it being, especially Konpeki, lubricated. What does that even mean? Does that mean it just flows smoother? Does that mean that it writes wetter? Does that mean that your piston operates smoother as you're writing with it? It's not specific, because given no like firm, objective thing to talk about here, we're left to just make our own determination about what lubrication means. Same as saturation, same as all these other things. And it's going to be different in different nibs and different feeds and all these different things without some like specific, consistent scientific way to measure it. So there is a way to do that, but we don't have those resources to be able to do it. Therefore, we're just left to guess, and your guess is as good as ours.
Yeah, and I will say that Brian and I both agree that Konpeki is an excellent performing ink.
It's a great ink.
It's one of Brian's old favorites, and we know it flows really, really well. But the fact that it flows well cannot be solely attributed to the fact that it has maybe some lubricant in it.
It probably does. It probably does. Most ink have some lubricant in it.
Exactly. So what is probably happening is that it is a common component used in most ink. Yeah. And depending on how it's manufactured, some might be manufactured with more than others. Yeah. But, where does that line become where you get to a point where like, oh, it's officially lubricated now? Like, we don't know. No one knows. And it's just like if a company wants to say it's fast drying, just because they say it's fast drying doesn't mean that this other thing
what's fast, what's slow, what's normal. There's
what even is this?
How can you say something is fast if there's no standardized?
You can say anything is fast. You can say anything about anything. But here's the thing. You're going to find some inks that are labeled according to their alleged properties of performance. And then you're going to find some that aren't and still outperform those that are. Right. So you can find an ink that, like Lexington Gray, has nothing in its, titling or advertising about it being a fast dry ink. Noodler's Lexington Gray dries incredibly fast, like 10 seconds. And I bet you it dries faster than a bunch of inks that are labeled fast dry. And there are some that are not advertised as being permanent or water resistant that are going to be more permanent than the ones that are advertised as permanent and water resistant. It's just a thing. It all comes down to how the manufacturer is choosing to market their ink.
Yeah.
And I hate to throw my hands up on a second question in a row, but that's the reality of things.
I
don't know.
Yeah. So, to go back to it, I would say that most, if we were to leave it up to our assumption, we would have to say that most inks are lubricated, because I think knowing without absolute certainty on the way that almost any ink is formulated. There is some degree, because dye by itself really does not flow well. It's very dry. So you almost always need some kind, this is what I know, again, I've never mixed ink or anything. I could be wrong, but this is what I understand about it, is that you need some degree of lubricant to counteract the dryness of the dye. What I think people would generally consider lubricated is there so much lubrication that the ink flows wetter, writes wetter, whatever, more so than normal. But who determines what that is entirely based off your experience with other inks. So it kind of falls in this very fuzzy place where the reason that people bring it up now and then is based on their experience, or most often on social channels based on what they read about that other people have posted and maybe not even their own experience. They just like to, feel smart sometimes and maybe share something when in fact they may not know and there's not a pure definition around it. That said, Compaq is a great ink, so by all means.
That we can agree on.
It is really tough. There is no great classification for this, which is why we don't put it on our site a lot. Doesn't mean it's not lubricated, though. It just means we don't call it that because we have no idea what's going on.
If we call it that, that means that the manufacturer calls it that. We are just conveying that.
And we have no way to know whether that's any different than anything else. Just because they call it that, we don't really know. But bottom line is it a good ink? And that's why we sell samples of everything. Because rather than buying a whole bottle and being disappointed, you can get a sample. I mean, obviously you want to read stuff. Not everybody posts things online that they just hear other people say. I'm very much over-exaggerating there. I love the online community. It's not a thing. But, do some research. But then if you got to know, try it for yourself. Use your own determination. And then you can join the confused masses like the rest of us and be like, oh, is this lubricated? It feels like it. And then you'll be in the same boat as the rest of us. But at least you'll have experience with it. All right.
Okay, our next one comes to us from Ireentje.
Okay.
IEREENTGJE.
Wonderful.
Anyway, Good to have you here. This person asks us, I want to write more often to practice handwriting, but I don't know what to write. Suggestions?
Words. Words are good.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah.
I should have said that. I wrote down sandwiches. But
sandwiches, those are, it's names of sandwiches or words.
No, I was thinking she would actually kind of like
draw sandwiches.
No, like actually create a sandwich with
a sandwich. That's a little tougher.
I know.
With like a 3D pen, maybe you could create a sandwich.
You know what? I didn't think that one through, Brian.
Clearly not. Drew,
I was very hungry when I wrote that. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Anyway,
So we debated about taking this question because we have talked about get the art of cursive penmanship and, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Yes, you could if you improve your handwriting, you can do handwriting drills and all that kind of stuff. Sure. We have some resources for that. There's all kinds of stuff out there. So we wanted to go a little different direction with this, which is more just hey, I need some inspired things to write. If I want to write some stuff that's just different, point me in a direction of something that's interesting to write. So that's the direction we wanted to take this one. And because y'all are awesome, and despite me dogging people leaving comments about things that they read other people write, I don't actually believe that that's usually the case in the pen community. Y'all are great, actually. And because we have such an engaged following here, especially on YouTube with the Pencast, we thought it'd be a great opportunity for you all to post some suggestions in the comments, and then y'all can see what other people like to use for writing, for practicing handwriting and just finding inspiration and stuff. So we do have some suggestions for you, but we thought it would be a great opportunity for y'all to pipe in, whether it's just fun, interesting words or phrases, short stuff that you have. Drew's likes to take two random kind of things, a carrying
my new favorite
of some kind, my new some favorite, random food.
Cheese helmet's a good one, or apricot helmet. But recently, Happy Muffins has been my favorite because you've got the double P's, a big Y at the end, and then Muffins got the two F's. Yeah. Big ol' M. Happy Muffins.
There you go.
Or and who doesn't like writing those two words? Those are two great words.
Mark Bacchus, the Nibmeister, he's famous for writing mango chutney. That's his deal. So
that's a fun one.
There could be a short, fun phrase or something like that to write. Or if you wanted something, I went more the route of a famous speech or a piece of literature or something like that. Something to more like transcribe. That's kind of the direction I took it. So one of my favorite, famous speeches is Teddy Roosevelt, the Man in the Arena speech. Very inspiring. I've never written it out, but it's not super, super long, but could be kind of cool to write that one out. So that one's interesting and could be motivational. I went a different direction rather than the like politician famous speech kind of thing. I was like, let's go with something a little more romantic. So I don't like read a lot of poetry or any of that kind of stuff. Nothing against it, just not in my daily routine. So I just Googled like, what are the most romantic poems of all time? And I looked in there and apparently the Let Me Not to the Marriage of True Minds by William Shakespeare, Sonnet 116. Shakespeare, known for writing some good words. So, it's on a list on some random site on Google about one of the greatest poems of all time. Could be worth a look. So check that one out. Or then I went like, let's go a little more pop culture. Not too recent though. I went with the It's a Wonderful Life, the Lasso the Moon monologue. Very famous, what's not to love about that. So some nice heartfelt words there. So yeah, nice little mixture of some politics, some romance, and some, pop culture. So
solid.
That's what I got. Yeah.
Solid.
Could be fun.
One of my favorite things to write, I've done this several times, is Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot speech. That is a beautiful thing, really kind of existence affirming. I really enjoy that one. And it's
billions
beautiful.
And billions.
That's right. I really love that one. I've done that one several times. And then I'm a movie nerd. So one of my favorite kind of like battle speeches was Aragorn's speech from Return of the King in the third Lord of the Rings movie. That one is really good.
Yeah.
Charlie Chaplin's monologue from The Great Dictator is one that has circulated several times. It's very, very poignant, very meaningful, and as relevant then as it is today, or as relevant today as it was then. Not often recognized for his speaking roles, but this monologue is actually really, really well delivered and kind of timeless. So, and from my own heart, I have to say Rocky's monologue in the movie Rocky Balboa. It's a pretty long one. I have not written this one, but it's it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep going. Like, that's kind of the end gist of it, but it's a really inspiring monologue that he was giving to his son, and I love it. I'm a huge Rocky fan. And then, of course, not so serious, but the president's speech from Independence Day. Like, that's like an old like childhood favorite of mine. Like, that was super cool. I mean, very, very cheesy, but still pretty badass. I like it a lot.
That was a pretty solid movie. We were at a good age when that movie came out.
I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know how well it holds up. But I do remember, it was between that and Braveheart. But Braveheart, I don't think that speech has aged quite as well. I think it's a little bit more hokey.
Yeah, there's a lot of historical inaccuracies in that movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that one I'm like,
it's still a very entertaining movie, though.
It is. I just can't watch it. After, so I saw John Adams, the HBO John Adams series.
Okay.
Everybody's teeth. Just disgusting, just all rotten, falling out. Everybody's talking as though they're just experiencing pain with every movement of their mouth.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's realistic. So then going back and watching Braveheart, everybody's just pearly whites. It's just perfection in everyone's mouth. And I'm like, come on now. That's not.
I don't think that
Stop it.
I don't think that was happening.
Probably not.
Nah.
Probably not. Those Celtic battlefield dentistry, famous for their expertise.
I think I heard they originally wanted Brad Pitt to play the lead in Braveheart.
Oh man, yeah.
Not Mel Gibson.
Yeah, that would have aged equally as poor.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, those are our suggestions. So enjoy, and please, if you have any recommendations for this this delightful Instagram user who chose a name I cannot pronounce, please let her know in the comments.
Nice. All right, next one I got. This is from Jamie. I've been using fountain pens for a few years now, and I want to step beyond the usual nibs. In particular, I like the idea of a Sailor Naginata Togi grind, but I don't have the $600 to get one from Sailor. Okay, fair enough. So I'm thinking of talking to some nibmeisters and planning on attending my first pen show this summer. Regardless of the desired nib grind, though, do you have any recommendations for questions to ask or things to look out for when getting a custom grind? Great question. Great question. And Drew, you just went to a pen show recently.
I just went to a pen show.
Yeah.
I did not get any nibs grinded, but I will say the first thing that popped into my head when I read this question, and the thing I feel the most strongly about, is do not underestimate the value of simply getting a pen tuned and just polished. Like, if you've got a pen that you really, really love, but the nib is just okay, just get it tuned and smoothed, and a skilled nibmeister will be able to make it perfect. And even if it's a pen you think is great, odds are they can make it better. To me, the best thing you can do with a nibmeister is to bring them a pen that you want to love, and they can more often than not get you to love it. And that to me is just the best thing a professional nib grinder or nibmeister can do for you, is to just make something right the way it should, or make it right the way it should for you. Sometimes a pen is the way it should be, but just not perfect for you. They can make it perfect for you. And that would be my first recommendation. Sure, specialty grinds are fun and exciting, but I think that any person who's passionate about fountain pens should have a pen that just writes perfectly all the time, and they can help you get that. So that would be my first recommendation, is to give them your favorite pen, or a pen that you want to be your favorite pen, and just say, like, hey, make this as good as it can get. And that is just worth its weight in gold to me. As far as what you need to bring with you, prepare, like, really any good nibmeister is going to ask you the questions that they need to cater to your needs, because it's not in their best interest to just kind of like do their own thing and kind of, like, hey, here you go, because it's going to come back. So they are usually going to ask you questions, ask you to hold your pen how you would normally hold your pen, and assess your needs before getting started. So you don't really need to prepare a lot of questions or, thoughts. Just kind of know what you like. And if they have a website, which most of them do, check out their website, kind of like looking in the menu before you go to the restaurant. You'll see a list of the things that they're going to be able to offer you, the prices in a lot of the cases, whether or not they have any specialty grinds. And so you can kind of be ready with a grind request that that they can actually do. Whether it be a Naginata adjacent grind, obviously the Naginata is a sailor grind, but there are nibmeisters who can do similar grinds as well. So just know what you want, and my advice would just be to think about getting something just perfectly tuned and smooth, because I tell you, a perfectly tuned and smooth nib is just the best thing in the world.
And if you don't really know what you're looking for, and it's like seems like a lot of an investment to go with some like crazy grind or something, if you don't know specifically what you want, kind of what Drew said, going with just getting something tuned really well, it's usually pretty fast and it's cheaper too. So if you have a couple pens you really love, but you would love to enjoy them even more, you could probably get like 2, 3, 4, 5 pens tuned in about the same time and the same money as you could getting a specialty grind of some kind. So you might actually end up doing better just bringing a bunch of pens and getting them tweaked to where you love them. Because especially if you're going to a pen show in person, there's such an advantage to them seeing you right with it. They can see your angle, they can do the tweaking, they can hand it right to you. You can tell them, well, I kind of like this, but it feels a little bit like that. They can adjust it on the fly. It really is the best way to get something tuned, is doing it in person at a show. The thing I'll say is they often book up very fast. So if you've never been to a pen show, sounds like you haven't, don't necessarily expect to just like be able to walk up at any point and get your pen tuned right away. Oftentimes they will open up a list, maybe before the show or maybe even at the start of the show, and that thing may be booked throughout the entire weekend, and you will just be out of luck if they're really in demand. And especially as things have been opening up with COVID, they haven't not had a lot of pen shows the last couple of years. Probably, I don't know, how was it in Baltimore, Drew? Were they like nibmeisters like completely slammed? Were they even there? What was the sense?
I heard that Saturday was a little more slow than Friday because of the really, really shoddy weather.
Okay,
but that was an anomaly.
Yeah. Okay.
But I will say that a lot of the nibmeisters that I follow on Instagram often post that they have openings available and here's how to sign up or book a spot. So if you know who's going to attend the show, a lot of the times the show's website will have a list of vendors and exhibitors. If on that list you see a nibmeister, try to find them on Instagram. They might be providing you with some information that could benefit you ahead of the show.
And, another thing to keep in consideration, if you're looking for some really exotic grind that's very time consuming, they may not be willing to do that at a show because they only have so many nibs that they can grind while at a show. They may not be willing to do something super complex if it means 5 other people aren't going to be able to get their nibs adjusted. So do your research ahead of time, shop for who's going to be at the shows, try to look at their websites. If you can, even email them and say, hey, I'm going to be attending the show. I really would like to get this done. They may be able to guide you. I have no idea. It depends entirely on who they are and how busy they are and that kind of thing. But doing your research ahead of time, trying to make the most of the opportunity of being at that show, you'll do so much better and get more out of it than you would if you just like show up and see who's there and try to sign up whenever, because they may get slammed and you just might not be able to get your stuff done. So another thing I would think too is like, there are some nibmeisters that are known more for doing particular grinds. They may have a style they adapted. They may do something kind of cool and interesting. So if you don't really have any idea of something specific you want, but you just want something kind of weird and crazy, maybe just ask them and go with the thing that they specialize in. If they're really good at architect nibs or something like that, it may be better just to go with kind of their suggestion. Like if you go to a restaurant and you don't have anything specific, but the restaurant's good, you just like, okay, what do you recommend? What's your specialty? That kind of thing. You could just go to them and say, you grind me something that's really interesting to you. I'll just be happy to have it. So I don't know. That could be kind of cool if you are just overwhelmed with the options and you just want something interesting. But personally, I think architect grinds are really cool, especially if you want something in print. If you write a lot in print, like block print, architects are great in that way. If you have really small writing, going with like a really fine cursive italic is really good. It's not super time consuming, so you can usually get that done pretty quick and inexpensively, but they don't often come from the factory that way. So you can get really small cursive italics done pretty easily from a nibmeister. So just a couple of suggestions there if you needed some more unique and interesting nibs. Those are some of the more popular ones that we've been asked about too from customers. So pretty good. It's gonna be fun going to your first show. It's an experience for sure. All right, Drew.
All right, our number 5 question this week is from Daniel. And Daniel says, question for the Pencast. You're in the right place, Daniel. Thank you. You have mentioned a few times that you don't know the composition of inks. Why is this such a trade secret? We were just talking about this, Brian, during the lubricant question.
That's right.
Ah, yes. So why is this such a trade secret? Why are they keeping this so close to the ink belt? Ink vest. Vest belt. Whatever.
The vest belt. Do you have a vest belt? I guess you can have a vest belt, right? I don't know. You're more of a vest man than I am. I don't know. I don't know that I own a single vest now that I think about it.
Oh, vests are great because if you've got like long arms and a small torso, so you either need to choose between like well-fitted sleeves or well-fitted torso, vest kind of just like brings everything together so that like no one knows that I have a baggy shirt torso.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
See, me though, I have a large torso, but a very short, like upper, like body, very short.
So you just
torso.
have to tuck. You just have to tuck in a lot of shirt then.
Well, so yeah.
All right. Well,
we're falling down a rabbit hole that we don't need to go down. Talking about the weirdness of our body shapes, but because you and I both have some interesting things to note there.
We're unique snowflakes. So why don't ink companies disclose their compositions?
I mean, it's always been that way. Ever since we got into the whole pen thing, there's
no list of nutrition facts on the side of these things.
No, not at all. Not even close. So there's some of that, but I mean, it probably obviously goes back to somewhere, but that's not a recent thing. That's the way ink stuff always has been.
Yeah.
My guess, and again, this is a total just guess. It probably has to do with the fact that the actual act of making the ink is not actually that hard or time consuming, but the research and development, the formulation, the sourcing out of the correct supplies and materials and finding something that works really well, the knowledge and the chemistry and everything that goes into knowing the right thing to mix is very, very high. So what that does is that makes it ripe for copying, right? So if you have something, there's a lot of R&D. Think about like, I don't know, Coca-Cola Classic, right? Like they protect their formula famously, like in a vault. And there's like, they don't even, there's like 1 or 2 people or whatever the legend is that actually know the formula. But most other people, it's like they only know certain parts of the formula so that nobody can just take and steal their formula. But obviously they can manufacture gobs and gobs and gobs of this food, right? Or drink. So I think it's sort of like that. When you have something that could theoretically be very easily copied, if you've already done all the work of creating the thing and it's easy to replicate, well, that means that protecting that trade secret is of the utmost importance. I imagine ink is probably that way especially because fountain pen ink, most of the dyes and stuff, from what I understand, most of the dye components and all that kind of stuff used, it's not like there's fountain pen ink, dye manufacturers specifically. Fountain pen inks are like barely a speck of dust on a flea's butt in terms of what like industrial dye, industry. There are literally like train car loads of dye that are being sent to the textile industry and printing and stuff like that. It's like almost miraculous that any independent ink maker can even get any ink material because it's such an insignificant quantity compared to the industry at large. So I think that sourcing it, getting the right materials, all that kind of stuff is so difficult to do that, if you just gave away all those trade secrets, it would be so easy for other people to copy it, and then they would just make your ink and you would be out of business, and then there would be no new ink. So I think they have to protect it because it's so much work to just get the right components. That's probably the situation. Knowing what I know about the ink world, which is not that much, but probably more than your average person, I think that's what's going on. Just like recipes, or just like, if you have a famous restaurant that, is known for a certain dish, they're going to have their own kind of trade secret, the way that they do it, the way that they mix it, that it's just their own heart and soul and their own particular thing that they put into it, and they're going to protect that. So I think that ink very much falls into that same category.
You know what my theory is? It's much less complicated.
Oh,
I think that they probably just don't go out of their way to report any of it, and that they're not required to, so they just don't care.
That could also be the case, yeah.
I think that there's probably some oversight organization that they have to report their ingredients to in order to market it or to sell it. But it's not edible, so they're not falling under any sort of regulation, some FDA regulations, or they're not required to give us an MSDS sheet or anything like that. And I think they're probably reporting it to who they are legally obligated to report it to. But why in the world would they go out of their way to share it with anybody else? Like, that's more work. Why would they even bother?
Yeah, unless it's like we've talked about before, unless there's some particular component or particular quality that the ink has that makes it more marketable, then they'll talk about that aspect of it. Yeah. But there's really no distinct advantage, certainly in like a, legally reporting type of thing. There's no advantage to doing that unless you're required to, literally in any way.
Right.
But why would you even, talk about it?
Why would you bother?
Why would you talk about any of this? Colorverse, to their credit, probably talks more about the scientific components of their ink stuff. You open up Colorverse inks and there's all this, I don't even understand half of it, but it talks about viscosity and all these other things in there, and you're like, cool, but you're also like, what do I do with this information?
Right. Yeah.
Does this mean anything? And if nobody else is saying any of that stuff, you're like, what does this mean to me? Yeah. Even if you had an MSDS sheet, it doesn't talk about like the way that it's made, or even like the breakdown of components. Is basically a list of what's in the thing. Yeah. For safety reasons.
What would you do if yeah.
Anyway. Or if you were like, oh, it has glycerol yellow 123 instead of biglycerol disulfuride, be like, what does that mean to me in any way? So yeah, I don't know, but it'd be nice to know a little bit more, but yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well, those are our questions. We had a couple non-committal answers in there, but we definitely talked about them.
Really didn't give you a lot, but we do have a lightning round.
So we do.
We're going to pack in some, I don't know, shorter answers. I'll just say shorter. They're not going to be better. They're not going to be, more accurate, but they'll be shorter. So we're just going to go back to back. We told ourselves we're going to do like no more than 1 minute on these answers. We're trying to go shorter. So I'm going to start off, and we're just going to ping pong back and forth, the two of us.
Bring it on.
We're going to see how this goes. You ready, Drew?
Ready.
All right. From FitNix. Best high-end snap cap pens, preferably with gold nibs. Drew?
Lamy 2000, obviously. And then pretty much any ST DuPont. They're all gold nibs. They're all snap caps. They're super nice.
All right.
The end.
Fair. All right. That's it.
All right.
I'm not going to get my piece. We're just going to go back and forth.
Our friend Jade Twyler, that's what we called him one time, but it's actually Detweiler, John, I believe, asks, returning to the office soon, what are some of the best work pens? Brian, go.
Okay. TWSBI Eco, inexpensive, high ink capacity, workhorse pen. You can see your ink level. Great. Lamy 2000, writes great, doesn't look too flashy, so people wouldn't necessarily think like, ooh, what a fancy pen. Who's he trying to be? Or, ooh, I want to steal that. But it's a nice, classy pen. Great to use. And Jinhao Dragon, just because you haven't been around people a lot, and you'll be like, yeah, I got a effing bomb of a pen. What are you going to do? Look at me. That's if you want to just like, screw it. I'm back in the office. I'm wearing cargo shorts with a Hawaiian shirt, and I'm bringing a Dragon pen. What are you going to do?
God.
What are you going to do? I've been working at home with no pants for the last 2 years, so you're lucky you get this. I'm just going off the rails with it. But
oh, my God. All right. I kind of like
that. All right. Ashuria's Nook. How can you tell when a nib is damaged? My niece dropped my pen and is now scratchy as heck. Oh boy.
Yeah. Use a loop. You'll be able to see if anything's misaligned or totally jacked up. If it's more scratchy going left to right or right to left, then it is the opposite direction. You probably have a misaligned tines. One's like going like that or that. And honestly, a drop can really ruin a nib. So you'll see pretty quickly whether or not it needs some TLC. Might bring it to a nibmeister. The end. Use a loop.
Or replace it if it's a swappable nib. That could
Also
be, yeah. If it's like something you can replace with the Yovo or something like that, a Goulet nib. Replacing it's going to be cheaper and getting it fixed by Nibmeister. So that could be an option. Boom. All right.
Fisher Girl 63 asks, do nibs ever need to be replaced after certain amounts of time?
Yes. A certain amount. An uncertain amount of time, maybe. I wouldn't say certain. So, I mean, it's a wear item. You use it enough, it's going to wear down. And if you go to like Nibmeisters and stuff like that, you'll definitely see nibs that, especially if they're being used by the same person and they're held at the same angle, it's friction. Paper over time will wear away metal. It takes
for
a very
years
long
and
time.
years and years and years and years.
It's usually decades, but it depends on the nib. If you have an untipped nib versus a tip nib and all this kind of stuff, there's different quality of tipping that can make a difference. If it's an extra fine nib versus a double broad, the amount of tipping on there, that can make a difference. But yes, over time, that you can get basically like a flat spot on the nib that can wear down. If there's enough tipping material, you might be able to get it reground, maybe not to the same nib size. If you have a broad and it's really flat, it might then be a fine after it's ground, but it might be salvageable. You don't have to replace it, but it all depends. So this is the kind of thing like, over time, yes, eventually, but it's not like if you're used to using like calligraphy nibs, like dip calligraphy nibs, you basically buy those things in like 50 packs because you're replacing them all the time. It's not anything like that. Pretty much if you have more than like a couple of pens, you're probably not going to use any one pen enough to where you're ever going to have to literally replace the nib because you've used it so much. So I wouldn't really worry about it too much.
Gotcha. Also, just buy a bunch of pens and swap them out. Just the more pens, the less you'll wear them down. All right. Next one.
All right. Oh, yeah. This is me. Okay. Emma, 1996 NL says, are you able to ship to Europe again? And do you send bought stickers in envelopes or boxes?
Well, you know what? I meant to ask somebody about the stickers and I forgot to do that. But Emma, we never stopped sending to Europe. We have always shipped to Europe and we cover most of Europe with the exception of some, smaller territories and some countries. We usually send to most of the European continent. The only thing is we do have a limit on orders shipping to the UK. They have to be over $200 in order to leave us and go to them. But yeah, we never stopped shipping to Europe.
Yeah, it depends where in Europe, yeah. And obviously with stuff going on in Russia, Ukraine, there's disruptions that are happening. And there are certain countries where certain shipping carriers are available, not available. That kind of changes. We actually check it basically weekly and we'll adjust accordingly.
We have a list of all the countries we do not ship to on our FAQ section of our website, but most of Europe gets shipped to.
Yeah. And as far as the stickers and the envelopes or boxes thing, it honestly is going to depend if other things are ordered with it. If you're literally just ordering stickers, it's probably going to go out in an envelope. And I know we do get questions from time to time. People are like, just throw it in a stamp and, throw a stamp on a regular envelope and ship it out. And it's like, yeah, theoretically that would be good, but that's not really how it works when you have like a full-scale shipping operation, because we have to have tracking. We have a whole system that has to mark stuff and send emails and all that kind of stuff, and we can't do that if we just throw a stamp on a thing. So theoretically, if you
padded
just
envelopes.
Yeah, we usually use padded envelopes, but it's gonna, we're gonna have all the same shipping costs, which is kind of stinks, but makes it so that like if you just want to order stickers, it seems expensive, and it kind of is, but it's also expensive for us to process it too. So it's kind of like, it's really meant more of like tacking on while you're ordering other things, and all the costs kind of just get absorbed together. If you're just ordering stickers, they are very expensive stickers. If
you buy an empty bottle, those are super cheap, and we'd have to put those in a box.
There you go. Get stickers, or just get like 500 stickers at once. Anyway, if you place an order for $85, you get free shipping. So there you go. There's your answer. All right, John.
All right. Last one comes from Potterwatch221B. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
A pen/ink that you think is overrated. You know what, Brian? I will say that I know that this one is torturing you, but I almost put one on here where someone asked, could you give me some like advice on starting my own business? And I wanted you to be able to answer that in like
a lightning round question.
Yes, I thought that'd be funny.
Pen business or just any business?
Any business. So I was like, let me troll Brian by putting such a big question in here that he has to answer it over a minute. Like, yeah, I'll leave him alone. I won't do that. But
yeah, start it.
That's tempting.
Do it.
Start. All right, no, don't answer that. Answer this one.
Okay.
Something that's overrated. A pen or ink.
Anything brown, probably.
Oh,
is overrated. Yeah, that's what I would have to say. No, I legitimately thought about this, and I came up with nothing. Because, look, in order for something to be overrated, I would have to feel like too many people think it's good when I don't think it's actually good. There's things that maybe I don't like as much that other people do, but then I don't feel that's overrated. That's just what other people think, and that's fine. So I don't know. I got in my own head about this one, and I don't have a great answer. I don't know. A lot of people like the CP1, the Lamy CP1. Personally, I just don't like that pen that much. So that's always kind of like my go-to overrated pen. It's a fine pen.
It's also not super popular either.
It's waned a little bit over the years. As long
right,
as
here's one. We just published the underrated fountain pen inks video, and you said that Rouille d'encre is not is some people like that, and you don't understand why.
No, I understand why. I just don't like that color.
Oh, okay. You said you don't quite get it. I don't get it.
I don't get it. Like in my own like I don't like it. This is not my color, but I understand why the people that like it like it.
You're far too tolerant, Brian.
And I don't think there's more. You got to understand, Drew. Like, my entire job is like seeing the potential in every pen, every product that we sell. Like if it's
I can do that too. I do that when I'm in like Drew work mode, but when I'm in Drew, selfish consumer mode, I can hate all sorts of stuff.
I just have a really, I don't know. I struggle with this one. I don't know. What do you think is overrated? Maybe you can get the pump primed here. Do you have I think this is overrated thing? Maybe I can play off of that a little bit.
I think the Platinum 3776 is overrated.
Really?
Absolutely. Why would you pick that over any Sailor or any Platinum in an equal price? No contest.
Or Pilot?
I like it. I think it's fine, but I think it's I think it's overrated. Absolutely. I could give you a dozen things I think is overrated. Now, granted, if I put on my Drew, I work at the Goulet Pen Company hat, there is absolutely a ton of virtues I could extol on the 3776 as to why I think that could be a particular customer's ideal pen. But for me, the consumer, putting on the consumer hat, it's for the birds. You got to be able to switch gears.
I guess I'm not that versatile, Drew. I am what I am.
Fair enough. All right. I don't want you to change, Brian. You stay the same.
I only see the good in all of them.
Oh God.
All right. No, I'm really struggling. Maybe am I not understanding the question right? I know we're going long on this one, but it's the last question we got. I'm really struggling with this one. I don't know. Maybe let's use some feedback. Okay, so we'll get some feedback in the comments. Let me know what pens you all think are overrated. Maybe I'm overanalyzing. I'm trying to think.
A lot of people think the Lamy 2000 is overrated. Remember, we covered that.
Well, those people can go to hell. No, I'm just kidding. It's no.
Oh, we found it, folks.
Gotta keep it family friendly.
We found it.
Oh gosh. I could make an argument for that. pen being
oh my God! Come on, man.
I love that pen.
The custom?
I think that pen's underrated. As great as much as it's hyped up, I think it's underrated. But What do I know? What does this even matter? Who cares what I think?
I think the Custom 74 is overrated.
I think this Pencast is over.
Dang it.
You had a good run, Drew. No, I mean over. 39.
Okay.
That's what you got.
All right.
You had a good run.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm kidding. We're not ending the Pencast.
No, I like the Custom 74 quite a bit. I don't.
Let
think
me
it's
know.
overrated.
All right. Tell you what. If we get some good responses for the whole overrated thing, I'll read them and I'll like, oh, okay, I get it now. I think I'm just like overthinking it. Then I will follow up in the feedback on episode 40 and give you an actual answer. I'm legitimately just struggling on this one, but there you go. That's all we got for this one. It's a shorty at 55 minutes this week. But hey, that's short for us these days. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave us some feedback. Be sure to check out gouletpens.com for all of your fountain pen, ink, and paper needs. And you can email us at pencast@gouletpens.com because that's our email. And I don't have a fun fact, but I do have a fun phrase. It's got some laugh from the
Fun
kids.
phrase.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a dad joke.
It's more, no, it's not really a joke. It's more of like a funny statement to make. So
okay, bring it on.
I don't know how to tee it up exactly. Okay, so I've been told that I have a preoccupation with vengeance. We'll see about that.
Okay. That seems like
Not a dad joke.
Yeah.
Not a dad joke.
No.
But-
All right. I feel like that could be in like some 80s action movie
Yes.
with like a discount, like Dolph Lundgren or something like that.
It's like a bad line from an 80s movie. Yeah. There you go.
Okay. I can track with that.
Does that work? I don't know. I was trying something different this week. I don't know. We'll see if that worked. I know it's not like gut-busting laughter, but...
No, certainly not. But,
whatever.
Sometimes you need to lower the bar so that your next mediocre joke will sound even better.
Wow. I don't know how to take that. That was a bad.
Well, I'm just glad you didn't punch me in the teeth with another unexpected dad joke. That's what's coming next time. You better believe please don't. Oh God.
I'm gonna rope-a-dope. That's what I'm doing on this one. I'm just giving you a really low bar on this one.
I know. I'm like,
next one's gonna friggin' knock you on the floor.
That's not so bad.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Get ready.
Right.
Get ready, Drew.
All right.
I'm just kidding. I don't want to hype it up that much. I'll probably forget. And then
Okay.
whatever. That's all we got. Episode 39. We'll be back next time with a longer one. Thanks everybody. Have a good week. Right on.